Good morning and welcome to Wake Up to Broker Up with Mark, episode number 50 for 2025. You may remember last week that I talked about GREC investigation regarding advertising, and I also talked about a demand letter that Atlanta Communities received, and then some other undisclosed legal challenges or situations that I was involved in really all month, maybe since Thanksgiving. And as is often the case, all of you want to know more. And I'm happy to bring you more, although I don't know how much clarity I can bring to any of those situations because they're ongoing and, it's not appropriate to give away too much information. Let's talk about the GREC advertising situation first. Right now, based on what I think I know, we probably won't have any type of resolution or answer regarding that until probably February 2026, which is really just 2 months from now, before we know anything because of the timing of when the Georgia Real Estate Commission reviews the information after the investigator submits it, which will be in January, more than likely January 2026, which means that we'll know probably sometime in February after they meet. So, not going to have a whole lot of information about that other than advertising is important and you need to follow advertising rules and regulations and Georgia license law as it relates to advertising. Now, on to the information from the demand letter, because I think that's the one everybody really wanted to know something about. And this is one of those situations where, again, I'm not trying to scare you, but I want to make sure that you understand that what you say makes a difference, and how you say what you say makes a difference, not in ordinary everyday life, but certainly when there's a problem and a situation arises and you get a letter, and when you get the letter, there you are quoted and they print out what you sent by email and they print out your text messages, and then how it was perceived, again, not that you did anything wrong, but how it is perceived by the other side when it goes wrong can make the difference. So for instance, it says, Atlanta Communities Real Estate Brokerage served as the broker representing the seller pursuant to this agreement. Although Atlanta Communities did not serve as the buyer's agent and no agency relationship existed between them, Georgia law nevertheless prohibits Atlanta Communities from making fraudulent statements or negligent misrepresentations during real estate transactions. Atlanta Communities, acting on behalf of the seller, did, in fact, supply the buyer with misleading and or negligent fraudulent information. Big words. Coming from an attorney, always big words. Why? Because the attorney is going to attempt to back up those big words they just put in print in the demand letter. And they're going to do that by supplying information and evidence, so to speak, about those claims, right? So then it says, relying on the agreement, the representations made therein, and the representations from Atlanta Communities, the buyer undertook significant and irreversible actions. Their assertion. Obviously, that's the case. The buyer did that on their own, however, and not because of Atlanta Communities. Now, we go further into it, and here's where it gets interesting, and here's where I want to make the point about what you say may make a difference into how it's perceived. Because in a letter, Atlanta Communities agent sent to the buyer side of the transaction, in there, they used terms like, if the buyer does not agree to sign the addendum, we will not be moving forward with the transaction. In that case, we may mean any number of things, but the other side, now that the transaction failed, believes that we meant Atlanta Communities when really it was just the word we. I know that's splitting hairs, but I'm telling you it's going to make a difference. If, for instance, that same sentence had said, if the buyer does not agree to sign the addendum, the seller will not be moving forward with the transaction. See the difference there? See how then you take all emotion out of it and you take Atlanta Communities out of it, because let's face it, all we do is act on behalf of the person we represent or the entity we represent, and we don't make the decisions, we just pass the paperwork. So further in there it says, we understand this may impact your buyer's decision and respect whatever route they decide to take. Well, again, it should say the seller. You got to be careful with words. And if you're not sure whether you are, send it to your broker for review. Again, this is not to scare you in the everyday operating, but you got to be careful. Otherwise, when you see these as attachments in a demand letter situation where the attorney is throwing everything against the wall to see what sticks and to see who's responsible, then it makes a difference. Why not just avoid that? It's kind of like a punch list on a new construction. They love for their punch guy to find everything, and the truth is, why don't you just construct it better? And then the punch guy goes through there and says, hey, there's no list. It's beautiful, it's perfect, it's immaculate. Obviously not realistic, but nonetheless. So I hope this provides some clarity, but again, be careful when you use the words I or me or we or us, because it really should be the seller, the buyer, them, and take no ownership of who you represent, because if it hits the fan, it'll sound better, if nothing else. Toys for Tots continues until the 18th. We would really love to have any toys you may want to donate by the 17th so that we can get them to the Toys for Tots warehouse. Thanks for all you do in support of all of us at Atlanta Communities. Enjoy your day. Enjoy your weekend. Thanks for watching. I know this is a long one. Take care. Bye-bye.